Hi, I'm Dan Linstead, and I'm here with my good friend.
Thibaut De Vylder from dFakto.
And the only reason I didn't say that is I would kill the name because I don't speak French very well. So we're talking about dFakto, and we're talking about the vendor tool certification program, but it's been a while since we talked. So I'd like to know a little bit more about what you guys have been up to since you did receive your certification. By the way, congratulations. You are the first tool vendor to receive that. I think that's awesome. They worked really hard to get it. So cool stuff. So what have you guys been up to? What have you developed? What's going on?
Okay, so last year was pretty tough, in fact, on our side. First, we had to complete the certification. We received the final certification, I believe it was on the 30th of August of last year, 2023. Going there is easy, but then what we had to do is take everything and put it back into the tool. So that's what we did for the last month, in fact. And we got the first release of the Data Factory 3.0 that was released on the 5th of March of this year only. So a lot of stuff, a lot of work to do to get the certification. And I will later ask you some question about the feature of this certification, because I believe that few people understand a little bit the content and what you've been up to.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you need to have this solution up and ready within your commercial solution, and that's not the same stuff, in fact, at the end of the day. So that's what we've been up to. And we took also the opportunity to re-simplify a little bit the interface so that most of the people today can have limited knowledge of data vaulting, but they need to have a basic knowledge of data vaulting. And what we see is that today, some users are business users and non-technical users coming from the data. So we embrace the business, the techno-business consultant.
That's awesome.
Because we believe that these people have the right to use the power of data vaulting without having the hassle of data vaulting, in fact.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach and desperately needed. Close that gap.
Close the gap, open and make it accessible to a wide range of people. That's basically what we aim to. So, but can you explain in a few words about the certification, what it is? Because I believe people misunderstood a little bit the ideas and what you need to do, in fact, to go there, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. So the certification is really about a baseline. And one of the things we did was we established a certification to make sure that all the tools would submit exactly the same product. And be tested, sorry about that, guys, be tested on exactly the same criteria. So in order to do that, we were not able to develop test criteria using the tool itself, right? Because that would lead to bias, and it would lead to bias towards certain tool vendors that did certain things and other tools that didn't. So our testing criteria is really all about, can the tool generate the artifacts that DataVault states are part of the standards, and also generate the code in such a way that the data itself has met the standards. So we don't test the code, we test the outputs of the code, and we test the inputs of the code. And we also test the actual structural integrity. So our test cases are divided up into basically two categories: structural integrity tests. Is a hub a hub? Does it have all the factual elements and the required elements and everything else? Same with links and satellites. And of course, we do all the subclasses. We do hierarchical links and same as links and multi-active sats and all that. And then once they pass all the structural, then we start looking at the data sets. And what we do is we execute the code that the tool generates, which is required part of the delivery. And we set up a certain set of test data that we maintain, and we know what the outcome should be. So we run the code, we test what the code has generated against our predetermined outcome to determine pass or fail states. And that leads to an unbiased test in terms of fairness across the vendor board. So in other words, it doesn't matter whether this tool has this feature or not, right? So features don't matter. At the end of the day, it's all about structure and does the code move the data to the right place? Are the mappings consistent, the metadata consistent, and so on. Is a hash key computed the right way? Is like one of those tests. So that's what the test cases are all about. Now, from a consumer perspective, because you asked about that, the thing that to be cautious about is we're certifying a particular version of the tool and saying, yes, it is capable of producing code and generating data as long as you run that code that meets the standards. Now, that's all we're saying. Now, we know full well that certain customers require customizations beyond that. And other customers, well, the idea is just because you can doesn't mean that you're going to use it that way. Our hope is that, when you first walk into a customer site and the customer says, can you do this in Data Vault vanilla? The answer is yes, right? And so that's what the certification really means. You're qualified to produce the standards as a starting point and then build on top of that what the customer actually needs.
Okay, let's speak about two aspects, the vendor benefits and maybe the clients the customer benefits. You speak a little bit about the customer benefits. About the vendor benefits, how do you see, what do the vendors say? In fact, they say that they are now happy to comply with something that they can rely on, or?
Yeah, the vendor benefits, one of the vendor benefits is you get trust in your marketing. So when you say to a customer, yes, we comply with the Data Vault 2 standards, which a lot of vendors claim but aren't even in the program, the customer can then go and say, well, you did receive your certificate, so therefore you pass the rigor of DataVaultAlliance, so we are going to believe what you say when you say you actually generate to the standards. It also means from a vendor perspective that you can go into a customer with confidence, knowing that when you close a deal, if a customer needs a particular thing that was part of the certification, a particular object or a particular type of solution, that you can generate that out of the box without thinking twice, without any customization. So that's a time savings for you as a vendor, and it's obviously cost savings for the customers.
We see it because when we have interaction now in the booth, you see that the people, okay, we don't speak about all this stuff that it's supposed to do because it's already done. We speak about the features, the fact that we have a modeling, which is UX UI design, very easy to use. And we speak about other features than the Data Vault, and that's pretty handsome. From the client's benefits, do they expect interoperability of the tools or stuff like that? Or what do they expect exactly from the vendors being certified?
Well, I would argue or suggest that the client benefits include, again, level of trust. So if they come to you and say, well, we know you're certified, we looked up your certification, it's valid, we believe that you do in fact generate all the Data Vault artifacts as necessary. So that gives them a level of safety. They don't have to, as you pointed out, have to have the conversation, do you generate a hierarchical link? They don't have to ask that, right? Do you generate hubs this way? Can you do hash keys or hash differences? None of those questions need to ever come up. I mean, I'm sure they ask them at some point, but they don't need to be had, right? The answer is yes, we pass the certification. So a level of trust and out of the box. And what happens with vendor tools that aren't certified oftentimes is the marketing and the salespeople will come in and say, yes, 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 we do. The customer will invest, get the tool on site, and then no, they don't. Or, oh, that requires customization, which is more hours, more time, delays. This way, with the certification, there's none of that. There's no delays at the customer site.
What we see on our site is there are some part of the consultants or Big Four and Big Five alike consulting firm which are dealing with Data Vault. They are very sensitive to the fact of being Data Vault 2.0 certified because that's what they expect. In fact, they will not go for something which is not in fact certified because it doesn't make sense to recommend something which has no validation in fact by the market. How do you see the certification market within 2 years? In fact, how many of them will be certified? Because we are the first one, we are still alone.
Well, we have a couple of vendors that are still working at it. And to be honest, part of that has slowed down a little bit because our focus has been on CDVP 2.1. including data lakes and all those other wonderful things that we need to move to, JSON satellites and such. So the certification is changing to include new objects and new types and additional needs customers have. But
And that will be part of the 2.1 or
it will
2.0 or
be
2.2?
No, the 2.1
2.1
certification when it's made available. But we do think at least 2 other vendors will be entering the market as certified vendors in the near future.
In our solution, we put in the business vault a very important part with respect to data quality. And I was just wondering, when will the data quality be part of the framework and be fully integrated in the framework? Because we just had to add something for the moment, which is not there.
Yeah, there are some parts of quality that are already in the existing certification, and that is the assertiveness that the data will be moved by the code that meets the cert to the right place, and certain calculations will be done, like hash keys and hash differences, in the right way. Beyond that, testing data quality probably won't be included in the cert unless there are repeatable quality standards we can apply across the board. And a lot of that has to do with reconciliation to source systems, sensitivity to source data, which we don't have access to and never will, and then, of course, the ever-changing business rules on that side. But that said, I do recommend, and as you've seen and as you started to do, engineering inside the tools for and around data quality metrics and testing is an important piece, and it will help your tool and your customers move ahead leaps and bounds.
Okay, clear. I would like to speak about a word which is used all the time, but not that well perceived. It's about automation, in fact. When we talk about automation with respect to the Data Factory 3.0, we speak about a triple automation. First automation is that we automate the fact that the logical model is validated, because we don't want to create something which is not validated, or the good elements, the good components, the good description is there. That's the first automation that we do. The second is the turning of this model into code, and this is something which is funny on our side, because you can choose for the database, you can choose for the infrastructure when you do it, and you can even have hybrid infrastructure, having on-prem for the QA and having the production which is running on AWS, in fact. So this is the type of stuff that we play with. And the third automation is about the orchestration, because we don't want the people to touch what's happening, because we want to reduce the cost and we want to reduce the human errors. Is that the way automation is used for automating data vaulting, or is it another way, in fact?
I think automation has a number of facets that need to be addressed, and I think you're moving in the right directions. We already spoke about quality. I think automation in different aspects of quality, like automation of profiling, is one area where you've got this load of metadata, and you can kind of suggest to your customers, this is the kind of profiling that should be happening. In fact, we're going to generate these profiling cases and help you explore your data set. I think data quality is another one where you can automate certain things around data quality and be generating, again, valuation of the data set in terms of completeness and correctness and boundaries and so on.
Consistency between the data source.
Absolutely. Reconciliation. And I think some of those things you can introduce AI inside the engine to assist with wizard-driven type of interactions that say, I'm going to guide what we generate by an AI discussion, for example. I definitely see that going forward as an
That's something that we
area.
will show in the demo that we have later on, basically, because we use AI to support the generation of the information mart. Why? Because we trained AI with a lot of good practice, in fact. So we have some kind of a bot which is answering all the time with the right SQL sequence, in fact, just to generate automatically the AI. That's something that we will include in the product within this year, in fact, because we believe it's so easy to use that it perfectly fits with the other. Okay, I have one last sentence I would like to read and want you to comment. And the sentence is the following: certified Data Vault practitioners should use certified data vault solutions.
Of course, I'm going to agree with that. That is where they should start. I think one of the other customer benefits of that statement, along with what we were talking about earlier, is the fact that the customer can enable people, as long as the tool enables people who don't necessarily have certified skills, to do things that a certified person would do. So that's a huge benefit. But if you're already certified, then yeah, of course, it goes without saying you should be using a certified tool. The biggest reason is, again, if you're not using a certified tool, then you're going to have customization out of the box, just off the starting blocks. And you're going to say, well, this tool doesn't really handle hierarchical links properly, or it doesn't handle this situation or that situation. Why? Because they're not certified. So they either don't do it, or they do it halfway, or they don't do it correctly. So there's always that, well, this is a non-certified tool, so therefore I've got at least a month, 2 months, 3 weeks, whatever it is, building these customizations. And they go from client to client to client, and they do this over and over and over again whenever they run into this type of tool. So having a certified tool erases all that. It's technical debt that goes away, right?
Well, I totally agree, but it's not that common. Okay, my last question, so because I believe we are at the end of the interview, but what would be the 3 features that you expect to see in the next year? In fact, if you had to dream about something, what would that be, in fact, that you didn't so far, in fact?
Well, so far, I was going to recap 3 of the ones we've already talked about, which one of them you said you're already doing, which is the interaction for producing, using AI to produce BI answers, help accelerate that process. I think looking at the human factor and seeing where the human workflow process is slow or cumbersome or burdened, and then focusing on how do we leverage AI in certain parts of that workflow, because you can't do it all today. Maybe in the future, but
I totally agree with that.
And just really saying we're going to accelerate that process. We're going to add a bit of AI plus a couple of wizards that help guide that and with the particular outcome, so that, you know, obviously you need a guided engine for the learning system. But I think accelerating what used to be human grunt work, we'll call it, and making it more automated and repeatable, I think those are the things to look at. And again, we mentioned 3 specific areas. We mentioned data quality, we mentioned profiling, and we mentioned the BI side. I think there's a couple others, but I would need to think about that a little more to get a full answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. And thank you all out there for watching. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.